Up to this point, all the nitrogen rates have been based on what variety you're growing and whether you're on a silt loam or clay soil and what your previous crop is. And that's worked pretty good. But we're going around and getting an average, and if your farm's average, then you're dead on. If not, you've got to make an adjustment based on your experience with the field. And that can be a tough call. We've never had a soil nitrogen-based test in any of our crops. We've searched for it for decades. Many have been proposed, but when they reach the field, they didn't work at all. We've got one here that works. We call it a nitrogen soil test for rice, or N-Star. We're looking at hydrolyzable nitrogen in the soil. We've got a high correlation of 0.88, which 88% of the points then. This soil test is 88% accurate. And we think now we can give you a nitrogen that is field specific. And that's good from an agronomic and economic and environmental standpoint. Yeah, let me have the next one. Now, depending upon the producer and his abilities, we're going to give him 3 different nitrogen rates. We're going to give him the 90% relative grain yield. If he's saying, I think fertilizer prices are too high, or I think I'm kind of inefficient, I don't want to go for that 100 and put that extra money into it, because that's the 90 curve right there. This is in rate to achieve your 100% or your grain yield. Down here is the nitrogen soil test. As the nitrogen soil test increases, then you need less fertilizer nitrogen. So we're going to give him 3 different scenarios. Let me see the next one. So here are 10 different fields, and we went around and looked at these validation studies. Now that's what we've got going on in the big fields, is where we've put out 90, 95, 100% of what we should for a given soil test, and then we're comparing that to the standard 150-pound N rate. When we were going around yesterday, the discussion wasn't whether the nitrogen soil test works, it's whether the 90% was as good as the 95. The 95 was as good as the 100 or the 150. But this 90, can I cut back to this N rate? That's what the discussion was about. Some locations we felt comfortable. Some locations going, I don't know, I think I'd go up to that 95. But this will then give a farmer a choice depending upon the price of the urea. If the urea price is low, shoot, why not get a little insurance and let's go with that higher N rate. Make sure we've got enough out there. But if urea prices go up to 1,000, 1,500 a ton, like some are projecting they will in the next several years, then this 90% is going to look pretty darn good. But this nitrogen soil test assumes one thing, and that's that your other nutrients are at an optimum, your P and K. If you're not going to put out an adequate amount of P and K, then I sure wouldn't want to shoot over for the 100, and let's back up to the 90. But the soil test will then give the producer a choice and tell him what it's thinking, and then based on his experience and his management abilities, he can choose what he wants. One of these or the standard recommendation. Now you can see on some of these soils, we can save quite a bit of money versus 150. But if you look at this soil down here, pine tree branch station following soybeans, it's going to recommend more than what we're recommending right now. So we should be able to be more accurate on the fields where they need more than what we've been recommending before, and more accurate on the fields where they can, where they've needed less, but they've been putting out too much. And Dr. Cartwright thinks that backing over to this 90 can save us on fungicide applications too. Now lastly, what I want to talk to you, what's very important in the management and using this is pre-flood nitrogen management. It sets the yield potential of the crop. Actually, if you put out enough pre-flood nitrogen, you don't need any mid-season, and we were looking at some of those. But the big thing with pre-flood in management is getting that flood on timely. What we found out in research is in 5 to 7 days, we can lose up to 30% of our nitrogen that we applied. How do you manage something like that when it takes most producers 5 to 7 days to get a flood? You need some type of inhibitor, so we've been testing those. We've tested Agritane, we've tested Extend, we've tested Upgrade, and we've tested Nutrisphere. What we found is of those 4, only Agritane did the data indicate minimized ammonia volatilization. And it kept it down very low for 5 to 7 days, and then it starts losing its punch a little bit. So if you got a 0 grade small field and you can pump up in less than 2 days, you don't need to use a urease inhibitor. If it takes you more than 2 days, then we recommend you use agritane, and that would be at 4 quarts per ton. If you take more than 5 to 7 days, then Trent Roberts has some data that says you might want to boost it up to 5 quarts per ton. But you really want to get your flood on in 5-7 days or less. If not, then nitrification starts taking place, and we don't have any real good nitrification inhibitors out there right now on some of our soils. So field may need to be cut down or whatever, but a flood needs to be put on that field in 5 to 7 days.